I'm really excited to get into programming today and talk to one of Sundance's best. So I now introduce the senior programmer for shorts, Mike Plante. Hey, Mike.
Hello. Thank you for having me. I'm
worries.
so sad. I love coming to London every year. As I was saying, in June, I like coming to London and hanging out. I think it really is like, I'm not just saying this because I'm on this thing. It really is. I think London's got one of the best film vibes right now. You know, we see a lot of good, I mean, we've always seen good stuff come from there because your government pays for art. God damn it. So, but we always see a lot of good, all kinds of films, shorts and features come out of there. But just going there and just being there, you know, I go to FOP Video.
Yeah,
and go
FOP's so good.
Oh, so much good stuff. And then actually coming by, you know, BFI, but then also going to all the tiny things. There's so many good tiny art houses doing stuff. You know, I was at the Castle this year, and then I'll think of more. There was a couple more. A Close Up I didn't get to go to last time. That's really cool. So, yeah, London's a pretty exciting place right now.
It is. We're definitely spoiled. Plenty of places to go watch movies that I hope will be opening soon.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
Cool. Well, I wanted to kind of kick off and go sort of like right back to the start and just sort of, you know, how did you get into programming? Like what initially drew you to it?
Yeah, I just grew up wanting to make films. Like when I'd see a film when I was a kid, I'd always wonder how it was made and just sort of annoyed my parents and friends just because I couldn't enjoy a film. I was just like, oh, how'd they do that? So, but then when I turned 18, I was too scared to move to Los Angeles. And I had a girlfriend that was going to move back. It was Western Colorado, which is, how do I describe? Trying to think of a rednecky town in England. Do you have a town that's like mostly farming and ranches, but still very liberal?
Do we? People in the comments?
Yeah, let me know. That's not like super conservative. I mean, you know, there's obviously cowboys there, but pretty okay cowboys. People would let you do what you want, and so, you know, there was a tiny little bit of culture. But when I moved to this other town in Arizona, Tucson, Arizona, which is sort of a lefty town there, I went to school and I just took film classes there, and there happened to be a class where it would teach you about exhibition. Mm-hmm. And if you take this class, you have to work at a film festival. Okay. And so it's just like, that was 1993. And so now I'm still doing it. The thing was, it was so tiny that I could become a projectionist. I'd sell tickets, I'd run the movie, and then I could also help program. And by being like anybody that's even thinking about making films, like you should work at a movie theater or or FOP. But if you work at some sort of exhibition, like a film festival or a movie theater, you learn a lot about filmmaking. You know, like you see how audiences react to stuff. You see why things work and don't work. Just to see stuff on a screen and learn about actual projection and sound really informs you. So I just really loved it from that. And I was already sort of a film nerd, so I could talk about films that were obscure. And I wanted to see, I also have the ability to like watch tons of bad movies along with good movies. And so I was just sort of fit for the job. So I kept making stuff and working for festivals. And the fact that I started somewhere small really helped. Eventually, a projectionist job opened up at the Telluride Film Festival, and I had gotten that. And then like actual 35 millimeter reel to reel. And that was in 99. And then some people who worked there also worked at Sundance. So I got a tech job and just sort of got along with everybody. So, okay. So I guess Wales. I guess I grew up in the equivalent of Wales.
Yeah, Wales, parts of Southwest.
Bristol's way too hip, isn't it? I forgot to say, not hip.
Key component, can't be hip.
Yeah. Banksy did not come from this part in Colorado, yeah.
Okay, definitely Wells in that case. Right,
okay,
I love that. Okay. And so was it kind of natural that you veered towards short films, or was that kind of a conscious decision? Like where did it come about that you ended up in shorts over feature films?
Just dumb luck. I mean, so I was making shorts because that's what I could make. And I would work on features. Like I was a cameraman on somebody else's feature, and I started learning editing, but I could make a short because I was broke and none of my ideas were that good. I eventually started making documentaries only. And so then at Sundance, it just happened that there was one shorts programmer, and she would watch everything, and then she'd figure out the best stuff. And there was one programmer, Trevor Groth, who later on became director of programming. And me and him also did this festival called Cinevegas together in Las Vegas. But they just started getting so many shorts. They're like, well, you know, do you want to do this? Because you like films. I had a film zine that I Xeroxed and like got distribution in bookstores. So it was just sort of this weirdo that liked films a lot. They're like, well, you can probably watch a lot of films. I was like, yeah. So, but I enjoyed it because like, I really enjoy working at a festival. I want to work somewhere in film. I would love to work for a movie theater again someday. But the fact that I could do shorts and then go and make films, like it's not like it's less work. It's just, it's a little less of what I want to do. It's different than what I want to do. So I can kind of keep things compartmentalized. I have worked for other festivals and done features, but less.
Yeah.
And it's sort of just by luck. So I've been doing this since 2001. So now I don't even want to do the numbers, whatever. I've probably seen like 10,000 short films. So,
oh my God, yeah. You must have.
For me, it also stays interesting though, because, you know, without getting too into it, you know, there's so many politics to make a feature, and it's rare you're not making a feature with some sort of committee. And so, you know, often festivals are like, why don't you just show this kind of film? Like, well, someone might have not made that kind of film, except if it's a short. A short, you don't need permission. A short, you can do relatively cheaply with somewhat small crew and cast, or, you know, you could take longer to do it and it's still, you can achieve it. So the kinds of things that we see in shorts are always really fresh. And that kind of, that's kind of a fun part of the job.
Definitely. It's the most exciting thing about shorts, for sure. That's what I love about them as well. So can you talk us through like what the process for programming at Sundance looks like? Like obviously you said earlier you're kind of already begun. And so how many films you're getting? Are there pre-selectors? How are you starting to whittle down those films to the ones you want to show? Yeah,
I mean, if anybody can submit to us, we're also the cheapest of all big festivals. It's like $40 on our early fee. So man, what is that? That's like 32 quid. You're like,
yeah, that's great.
And if you're in Canada, it's not so great. So then it's, but we keep it. I mean, it's our job to discover new talent, to find new voices, as well as support people who make a living. A lot of people only make short films and have a great career. And so sometimes we show pretty much every short Don Hertzfeldt has ever made. And like, that's a certain level of filmmaker that's pretty great, but still he's made a living in shorts. And so we continue to show that's not just gimmies, but he's making a career with that, or we support it. But you know, anyone sends it in. Right now there's 7. Last year there was 10 shorts programmers. And so we would watch every single submission that comes in. Now we're down to 7 because basically it's the programmers that all have 2 kids, and because of the situation, it would be really difficult for them to watch 1,200 shorts each. So there's 7 of us. We each watch 1,200. And then I have just like 2 or 3 screeners, which they help, but it's still, I watch my 1,200. And then if they watch something and it's remotely good, then they kick it to me and I watch it. So basically they get rid of all the YouTube videos and cat videos. I actually would love to watch all cat videos, but so they get rid of the really rough stuff. They send some things to me, and even out of that, you know, maybe 1 out of 100 gets in or has a chance, but it's still like, so I double check everything. And the way we do it, how could you possibly watch all this stuff? It's just, we just take 6 months to do it. So we start in May, we finish November. They're short, you know, and how much of it do you watch? Like, well, look, if it's 30 minutes, it's gonna have to be pretty good to get in. So I'm gonna watch 15 minutes of it. If your 15 minutes is not great, or, you know, good, but not amazing, then the last 15 minutes aren't gonna change anything. It's just too long of a short.
Yeah.
And if it's 10 minutes, I'll watch the whole thing. Man, it's only 10 minutes. I get paid a small amount, but I get paid to do this. So, and it's definitely, it's not like you can tell in the first minute necessarily, because, you know, often a good film is good and it continues to be good. But sometimes there's a film that, you know, there's a film in a film, but not so literally. There's something weird. Okay, is that on purpose? It's not about bad acting. It's just something's not coming together. Well, that could be totally on purpose. You want to make sure. From that, we make a short list of the best of the best. So you hear that we get over 10,000 submissions, but really, you know, people film their kids because they want their kids to be child actors, all this gross stuff. We get stuff that's just, and I know what outsider art is. A lot of this is not that. A lot of it's just, you know, people want to be rich and famous and they think it's like a nickel in the slot machine. So we'll give it a chance, but realistically, you're looking at 1,000. Each year, there's 1,000 really good shorts, 500 that could play Sundance. So that's the only time the tough part comes in. Yeah. And so if you're watching this, you're already ahead of most of the game. So, you know, you're really up against 500. They're not up against 10,000. So from that 500, all of us watch. So if I watch a film and it's terrible, it's like, okay, everybody's gonna feel the same. It's not like that's gonna go play 20 other festivals. When I get to something that's in that 500, we put on the list and all of us watch it. And these end up being the films that we really see go around the festival circuit. Yeah. And filmmakers we keep hearing about. And then it's just hard. Then it's difficult because if you can only show 70 non-COVID, you can show 70, that's when the tough choices happen. So then you have to having esoteric discussions like, you know, well, here's 5 with the exact same story. Yeah. You know, you're probably not going to show, maybe you'll show 2. You kind of whittle it down from there. And then the real place we make the festivals, we make the actual programs. We don't have themed programs. And so we actually put them together. How are they going to be watched by an audience? And that's when something gets in or out. There's a certain type of film that can play first in a program that can really get things going. Yeah. It's not that it has to be funny, but it's good, it's fast, it gets you in a mood. It doesn't give you too much to think about. Then you have that kind of film that maybe is longer, but feels like an anchor. You can't follow it. That's going to be at the end of the program. What leads into something else? You know, if you have 8 shorts and only 3 are comedies, they're going to seem way funnier in between a bunch of dramas. Yeah. A genre is going to seem way scarier or way weirder. And then the drama is going to seem better because you play off each other. And then, you know, it's also like, it's not like voting. It's really just like, I think this film's great and 5 other people don't, then we just start talking about it, why it's great. Sometimes it'll be like, yeah, okay, I think we have other things that can play better or are doing the same thing. We have those kind of weird discussions. I would say, I'm just guessing. I bet like half of our program just gets in. It's great. 30 to 40 shorts are amazing. And then the other ones are all good and we want to support them, but then you're like, why does somebody like one thing over another? So it's pretty civil, actually. I don't know how other fests. I work here and I work tiny fests where there's only 2 of us. So I'm pretty lucky where I haven't had some weird, you will destroy this festival if you show this movie. We don't have discussions like that. You know?
That's good.
More laid back.
And you know, this is maybe just like a fellow kind of, you know, shorts watching geek question, but do you have like an ideal setup for when you're watching all of these films? And, you know, has that changed in this period as well?
It's pretty much the same. It's just my apartment, and it's really like my computer hooked up to a TV as a second screen. So that way, because once if the short's good, then you need to add it to these sheets. So that way you're just kind of already on your computer. And then it's just this really big, man, there was a sale for Labor Day, one of our holidays. It was like $300 for like a 55-inch TV. So it used to be I had a really good 40-inch TV and I was just close to it. Now I can kind of actually be far away from the TV. It's nice. And then, you know, we have our headphones into the computer too. So, yeah. So it's pretty relatively normal. You know, I also don't want to make it, it's tricky. You don't want to make it so pristine because people don't watch movies that way. Somebody's talking, somebody's eating popcorn, you're in a big room. You know, I would love to be in a nice screening room, but that'd be kind of overdoing it. I want a really good image and really good sound so I can tell the intent of the film. And, you know, we watch a lot of rough cuts, but for the most part, we know it's going to look and sound as good as it can in the theater.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I guess the chair, you know, the chair is a big thing. I don't know if you found this. This chair, I found it at an office place and it was rated, you could sit in it for 14 hours. And so I was happy and depressed at the same time. Like, oh, it's gonna be a good chair. Like, oh God, I sit in a chair for like 14 hours.
Yeah, all those 1,000 shorts or whatever that you're going to watch in that chair, you're like, wow, my life ahead of me.
Yeah. So, but it's pretty. It's not too difficult to sink into a film when it's good.
Yeah.
So that's a real test of it.
Definitely. And like, so when you're watching all of these shorts, like how much or how little are you taking into account like who the filmmaker is, or is it just solely about the film and that's not even something you're thinking about?
To start, I just hit play because people who come to see most festivals and definitely us, and I think even you're a short film fan, you're going to go see what this festival is showing and you're going to see it in the order they're showing it. And you're not going to do too much research, I guess, if you had to make a choice. But if you're one of our audience members, you know that we just mix it up. We do have an animation only program. So some fans may only go to that. We have a documentary program and we have a midnight program and we have a New Frontier program, which is avant experimental films. So if you want that vibe, you might go to those. But I think people really will go to anything and see anything that we show. And so also you come here, you're trapped. You got to go see the stuff. So if you, I mean, we take it that way. Like, I don't know if I'm supposed to laugh or cry. I don't know who made it or what their background is. What is this film? What does it do for me? Just to get it to the next level. So, and also I only got so much time. So just like, does the film work? All right, the film works. It's great. It's interesting. It's messy, but it shows talent. Okay, it goes on to our selects list. Then we watch all of them again so you try to get the list as short as you can. Then you really gotta like, okay, if somebody stumbled in and watched this film, they would get something out of it. Okay, now that we can't show all these, who made it? What are they trying to do? Where did they come from? I don't get into like, oh, your film could be better if it was this or if a different person made it. I don't want to, because I don't know, that you can't also make that claim where like you're this person just because of this information. Like it definitely helps us. Really, it just gets down to the, we're talking about mostly entertainment. That's most of the stuff. So you're like, okay, most of it is entertainment. And you'll find more often than not, I think with the US shorts anyway, like unexpected people making, it's not, you'll see something that is sort of slick, but it's not somebody in LA. They're in Iowa. Like, oh, cool. Maybe that's what they want to do, but it's like, oh, you have this idea because you saw it. You think maybe it's some huge professional crew. Like, no, it's actually that's just some interesting people somewhere outside of the coasts. Now, if we get into something that's sensitive material, that's going to be a social issue, that's going to be a kind of representation, they're like, okay, who did that and why did they do it? And then we have a discussion. And we're a diverse group, and that we also have some feature programmers that we may ask to watch stuff to see what they think. And that way you get a really, we're as diverse as possibly the films are. So we're going to have different we're all going to have a different viewpoint on it. And, we all get along and hear, what everybody says. And even then, sometimes it'll just be like, we're really surprised this person made that film. But if you do the research, you're like, oh, they have this background, it actually makes sense. That's usually, it's really often documentaries. Like, why is this person telling it? Like, oh, okay, they're actually a social worker, not a filmmaker. Like, oh, okay, that's really interesting. They may never make another film. Then you start to have that discussion.
That's super interesting. And I think also, I feel like it sounds like it's just the way that you and your team work together just sounds like a really great relationship as well. It's not like, some crazy like shouting across the table at each other being like, this is the film, I'm not showing this, all this.
I mean, I'm sure there are some festivals like that. But I've always said and maybe it's because, I didn't start working at Sundance until I was like 31. So I had a different experience. I wasn't just out of film school. I had failed a lot. And at the end of the day, plus working at a movie theater all that time, I had worked at a movie theater for quite a while in a video store too. And then it's like, we show movies to people. And, if we're lucky, it makes you think and it makes you a better person. And to really change the world, you're talking about a small amount of films, and those get out there and those are great, but you can't treat like every single piece of entertainment so intensely. It's like, and you can't damage your health on this thing. You know, you're a professional. There's an interesting thing, the professional part of it is like, I have seen this story so many times, and my personal interest is more the experimental avant-garde stuff and documentaries. So when you get to a fiction film, if we get to something that's been done 1,000 times and done well, I'm not interested in it, but I hear the group like, oh, we enjoyed it. I'm not, now it sounds like I'm putting them down. They're usually nicer about the mainstream stuff than I am. It's not like they're fooled and I'm so smart. It's more like, no, I actually laughed quite a bit. I was like, all right, I didn't really laugh because I've seen this a lot, but you did, and I trust you. And if you think it's going to play good, I think this filmmaker is actually a talented person. That's when you're professional about it. And you're like, I would pick something else, but I understand we need a mix.
Yeah.
And not worth fighting over.
No, that's really good. And like, so you obviously said that you rely like predominantly on open submissions for your programming, but do you are any of you actively looking for work at other festivals or kind of cultivating relationships with filmmakers directly?
Yeah, not really. I mean, we're lucky because for America, Sundance is usually the place you want to play. Also because we don't have a premiere policy. You can play other festivals and still play us. So if you're an American filmmaker, you often want to play Sundance because strong audience, which is the most important thing, but also then, yes, you can possibly meet somebody that might help you make a film in one way or the other. People will definitely return your email faster. It's a silly stamp of approval, but here it is. So I'm lucky in the fact that like we'll see most US shorts made in a year. We get a great amount of international stuff too. Often filmmakers in other countries don't realize we don't need a premiere. They won't send to us. So I kind of want to make sure I'm seeing stuff that plays at some Eurofests. Often though, you know, every other country, we can't go down this. Every other country though pays for its art, or at least helps and tries. And they also have a film institute that often like sends you to festivals, you know? So it's like, okay, we're super lucky. The one thing I do search for is much more experimental underground work, because if you haven't been to Sundance or haven't seen, you know, the mainstream stuff we show gets out there. You may not know that we showed Pedro Costa's last film, that we've shown all of Nina Menke's films, that, you know, all these really underground experimental, not mainstream movies, you know. There's a Black filmmaker from Virginia, Kevin Everson. We've shown him like 6 or 7 times, and it's very, very, always 16 millimeter, always experimental. If you don't come to the fest, you might not know we show that. So I got to go out and find that stuff. So I'll pay attention to Rotterdam, to Locarno, for example, and just invite them to at least try to at least show me their stuff. Otherwise, the 10,000, we see most everything of the other kind of genres.
Right. And obviously it's kind of the golden question, but like when you're watching a short, like what are those key things that you're keeping in mind when figuring out if it is one that you want to show?
I think it's really just, you know, does the film work in its own universe? Like what makes a short successful? It's like the film is setting its own bar for success. So we'll show some really dumb comedies, you know, but that's what it was supposed to be. It's actually funny. It's not too long. That's always a big thing. I'm sure you understand. And then if it's a heavy drama, like, you know, there's a short called Brotherhood that actually was nominated for Oscar last year, and like, you know, played great at our festival. And it's a very heavy story in Tunisia. And the filmmaker, she's from America and Canada, but she is Tunisian, and it's a fishing village that she filmed in. So it's just a real world that, you know, if you're going to tell me a film that's set in Tunisia about a member of the family that went off to fight a war and comes back, and it's very controversial what's going to happen when they come back, like there's so many ways for that to go wrong from not just an American, you know, and that's not that an American Hollywood producer couldn't make that film, but it's going to feel different. And it may be successful, but it's going to be different. And Miriam, with her making this short, it feels real. The setting is real. The photography is great, and the sound is great, and the acting is great. But the story, we've seen it a bunch of times. We know this story. You kind of feel what's coming, but it's so well made, and everything works so good. It feels authentic for the world it's set up. So it's really successful.
Yeah.
So you may have seen this story before, but you haven't seen it like this. You can only figure that out just by watching it and feeling it. I mean, I imagine there's a few shorts that one of us may love and the other 7 or 8 or 9 may not love, but the film's successful for sure. We're not gonna, there's a few that I couldn't get in. Yeah, I couldn't fight all the way in. So it's tricky, I don't care about, I don't know if you use the red or your phone. I don't give a shit. It's like, if is it a good image, and does the camera work? Is it motivated for what you did? If you make a Cassavetes style divorce drama, then it's handheld because that's what makes sense. It's not like real life is handheld. It's just, that's what you have set up your film for. So it makes perfect sense. It's good to have great sound. And then it's just like, if you can't hear the dialogue, that's a problem. But if you have good sound and it fits the style, if you have acting that fits the style. So it's those kind of things where it's less about being an amateur professional is just nonsense, really. It's more about, like, you made a film and it succeeds in its own way. And it's tricky. You got to figure that out as it goes.
Definitely. I like that, though. I really like the kind of idea of framing it on the intention of the film and the filmmaker. I think that's really cool.
I was trying to think, there's got to be some good, I wish I had a bunch of British films in my mind to tell you, like, like that film. You can't believe that film. I can only think of, like, crappy American films. We showed, like, a fake commercial called Cruising Electric. Here, I'll put this in the chat. So, I mean, you probably won't believe that we showed this. But it is funny, and it's 1 minute long. And it's a fake commercial for Cruising, the Al Pacino, but the home game for kids.
Okay.
It looks like a commercial. It's really funny. It's only 1 minute. You can't believe it's not. You're kind of like, wait, is this real? It works.
Yeah.
And it didn't wear out its welcome, But then if somebody said that played at Sundance, usually people are just saying, wait, what?
I like that, though. That's really cool.
Actually, sorry, real quick, let me write the other one. If people haven't seen it, Brotherhood is the other one. These are on Vimeo for free. Brotherhood's really good too.
Perfect. So you touched on it a little bit earlier around, like, obviously the length of shorts. And we could sit here and say that obviously a short film needs to be as long as that short film needs, and I think that that's kind of always clear. But it does happen that you're getting a lot of half-hour shorts that definitely don't need to be half an hour long. So do you have any advice for filmmakers when they're trying to figure out if their short play is too long or if it drags? Obviously they're too close to see that at that point.
I know, it's so hard. It's really, you got to do the best you can to get strangers to see it together in a group. And it's hard without a festival. It's great if you're in a school environment or at least some sort of local. When I moved to LA, there's this great place called the Echo Park Film Center. And it was, it's a hip part of town. Now it's a more expensive place in town, but it was a more rough and tumble place. And it was really like anyone could show up. You could rent equipment. I think if you were under 18 and you lived within 2 miles, you got their equipment for free. It's really a beautiful place. But they had a little 50-seat setup, and they couldn't do 35, but they could do 16, they could do Super 8, they could do video. You could rent the stuff, you could edit there if you did something. So a lot of people just had these groups together where we would write a 3-page script and then pick another person's script out of a fishbowl, go make a short and watch it. But you can, somewhere in town, you can set these things up locally, and then we do a screening for all of us. We'd get our friends to come in who had nothing to do with it. And that was like, man, you could not fake that experience.
Yeah.
And, it's a little tricky because you have some festivals Berlin do care about a premiere, so you don't want to mess that up. But like, if you can find local places that will just sort of do, really, I'm not sure. I wonder if Picture House would do that. They're showing a lot of movies, so sometimes you might have to go to a school or a community place. But, that kind of thing where you go to a theater and you get people to kind of watch it, just seeing it with other people in the room, you feel the length.
Yeah.
Outside of that, the other kind of half-assed way to do it is, if you're so convinced that this thing needs to be 30 minutes, send it to 10 festivals, see if anybody plays it. If nobody plays it, like, yeah, you know what? I think 30 minutes would also be, it's so rare that a 30-minute film would be worse at 20 minutes.
Yeah.
It's kind of, if you made a good film, you probably can cut it down. I get the difference between 30 and 5. 30 and 20, you probably can cut it down.
Definitely. It is rare, and it happens every now and then. There's definitely, like, in the kind of last round of programming I've done, there was like 2 films I remember that were 30 minutes long, and I was like, oh my God, this like is working and I'm into this and this is great, and it flew by, but it's rare.
Yeah, totally. And then people will say like, oh, well, Brotherhood, that played a bunch of festivals. Like, yeah, man, make a film as good as Brotherhood and you can be 25 minutes.
Yeah, exactly, because that's it. If it's brilliant at 25 minutes or 30 minutes, like, festivals will want it, they'll want to show it, and they'll be excited to show it.
Yeah.
But,
I will say, I don't know if you see this, but like, if it's a documentary, you often can get away with a longer runtime because you got that weight of the real world. You've got, it's a true story and archive. That stuff can run 30, and it's a different type of thing than a fiction film, and your main actor is good, not great, and this is more minutes I'm staring at that actor. That doesn't mean they're a bad actor. You may just need it shorter to use their best parts.
Yeah, totally. And I guess that's, how important is that when you're kind of assessing stuff? Like, you sort of mentioned, you don't really care what it's shot on. And so are you prioritizing like narrative, character, acting over the kind of, I guess, technical ability of the film?
It's weird. I think it's just kind of such a mix where, I mean, look, it's rare that all of those things would be bad and we'd show it. So what you'll find is we'll see such good acting and writing, then it can be shot pretty plainly. And there's not, a crazy amount of sound design, but it's good dialogue. So you don't need that. Now, if you go the other way and you see something that's incredibly slick and top-notch technical stuff, but the acting's terrible, nobody shows that. You kind of can't get away with things that way. So it's a bit with the medium, is that we're people following people through something. If you're watching something, you're in your head looking out at this world. Do I want to be in that world? So when the acting doesn't work, that's something that'll kill a whole film. Most of the time, I think the films we show kind of have the whole package, have it all together. And then when they don't care as much about technical stuff, then it is often such good writing. And which doesn't mean 20 pages of dialogue that are all perfectly performed. It just means a good story. And sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's, 2 shots and very little talking, It's really, and that's incredibly hard to do. But usually that still is what I was talking about, where they set up this world and it works.
Yeah, totally. And I guess kind of on that a little bit, do you find that there are any kind of common flaws or issues that you find with shorts that, like, the thing that ultimately stops you from showing it? Like, obviously acting can be a big one of them.
Being too long is almost always it. It's always like, we'll like something, and if you have a bad ending, you can get over a soft start. Like, oh, that start to get into the story took me 3 minutes, but the next 7 minutes are incredible. You're totally fine. Wow, this was great. And then at the end, somebody just dies. There was one, I was guest lecturing one class, and this kid was telling me about, it's like he was showing the life of his grandfather, who really was a farmer. It was in Northern California. And he's like, yeah, well, he does this and he does that. And then, the farm's failing and we just sort of feel it. But he doesn't say anything. There's no dialogue in it. You just feel things fail. And it was rough around the edges, but like, this is really good. How is it going to end? Like, oh, he has a heart attack and dies. Just like, it'd be worse? He doesn't have a heart attack and he's got to wake up and go back to work. That's even worse of an ending. That's what we all have to do. He's like, why do you got to kill the guy? Like, oh, I don't know. It's just because it's a movie. And I was like, what is a short film? Oh, this film, it was a student's film. It didn't come out. But it was, and then it ends up being a film where, it's about an experience. And so I was trying to convince this kid. He was also like 19, but I was just like, you don't have to kill people. And what I think what people worry about is that what are they going to walk away feeling? You know? And because of that, then you make your film really long. And then you're like, oh, I really want to let people go into something or walk away with something. So that's the first thing. Like you said, acting, you can have the best writing. It just doesn't matter if the acting's bad. If you have mediocre writing, you can still save it, do less dialogue. You know, if you have rough camera work, you can get over that. It's all about being too long, and the acting is tough. So
yeah.
I don't know. What do you think? What's the thing you hate when you see?
Oh, I mean, length is always it. Like, almost all the time, it's length. I guess like a lot of the time, it's just like there's just something that doesn't quite come together, and it will be that like, you know, there's kind of an interesting idea here, but it just feels like, and it's not to say that I think you need like huge amounts of development for a short film, but it just feels like underbaked, and it just feels that they've not kind of like totally figured out exactly what it is they want to say within this time that they've got, which almost always makes it longer too. So it's just like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, the things that come up, I mean, you know, what's funny is we were wondering, like, a lot of the bad stuff we see also has terrible fonts.
Oh my God.
The opening credit. And so when a bad font comes up, you say, this film's gonna suck. Okay. You watch it anyway, but then we were just like, how can that possibly be? How can there be a bad font and it's a bad film? And it really boils down to, if they don't care about that little thing, they don't care about a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And it's a small detail, and you don't got to be clever. You don't have to be like, I mean, you know, get Gaspar Noé's guy to do all your credits, you know, but you have to like, just, you know, it's one little thing that is indicative, and then it's like the sound's not very good, and then it's like, yeah, like it's not edited really tight. All these things add up. It's kind of crazy.
Definitely. And even in that, it's like I find as well, like really overbearing like scores and sound design. And I think especially like predominantly the films that I watch are kind of UK filmmakers, and like I know the pool of like copyright free music that everyone is working with. Like I'm very accustomed to it. Please don't use it, because it just kind of like, anytime you hear something like that, you're like thinking of another film that you know that used it as well. And I don't know, I feel like it takes like a really good film to like change your perception of that music, so then it has to be like, you know, even better again.
Yeah, because I'm just thinking, I love Ennio Morricone too. Now I'm just thinking of Good and the Bad and the Ugly, not your film.
Yeah, exactly. And now I'm thinking, oh no, it's not as good as, and it just spirals from there, doesn't it? But I don't know, I think like, you know, the thing for me that I'm always just looking for is just like a confidence in your filmmaking, and just like a confidence in what you're showing and not showing. And
that's a good way to put it. Yeah. And you know, you may like, I think kids, you're like probably like 25 making a short, but anyway, kids who are making stuff, people who are making stuff, like, don't feel like you got to figure it out. Like we show a lot of stuff, and you know, so on the side I make documentaries, but when I go into a film, like I like the subject enough that I know I'm going to spend years dealing with it. I don't know how it's going to end. I don't know how it's going to tell the story. And it's like, you know, you stumble on a lot of good stuff. You know, people put too much of this weight of just like, I have to know before I start shooting every single bit of it. Sometimes you do, it's great. And if you're doing something, you know, totally inside and out, perfect. That's what you should do. But don't get hung up on like, I don't know how this is going to work. Like, I just figured it out. And then people later be like, oh, the way you had the rain coming in the window, it's like, yeah, it was just raining and I forgot to shut the window. Okay, cool. Who cares?
Completely. And it just goes back to intention. There's like a comment in the chat now that's like, I hate when filmmakers put the central character through horrific trauma for no reason other than for us to watch it happening. And that's another thing. It's just like, you see something happen and you're like, why is this happening other than for you to kind of convince me that this is dramatic? But like,
it's tough. You can be funny just to be funny, and you need to make people laugh. You make them laugh. That's when it works. But drama's tough. And also, if you decide to make a drama, that's what everybody's making. So it's going to be hard to get your film seen unless it's 10 times better. If you make a comedy and it's funny, you are one of 10, not one of 100.
Yeah, that's so true. Always need more good comedy. Always.
I know.
Cool. I'm going to have a look at the Q&A and see what people are asking.
Sure.
Let's have a look. Okay, we've got one here. So, any advice for a soon-to-be graduate interested in a career in festival programming? How does one start?
And just like what I said, find a small place to work. And so then the combination of you can probably get the job. You can learn, maybe do multiple things and learn about it. And nobody's watching what you're doing. So you don't have to be under the microscope with the decisions you make, which is stressful. You know, we're under the microscope here at Sundance, but we're big and we have a lot of people and we've been doing it a long time. So we have a handle on it relatively well, you know, but it's not just like 3 people, you know, it's like, I forget what we have now. It's probably like 12 to 15 people chiming in on the features and 7 to 10 of us on the shorts. So you have a lot of opinions from different backgrounds. So you catch yourselves. But somewhere small, like, look, you got to entertain a community. So you get to learn so much. And then, look, you're rarely going to make more money at a big place than a small place. So you might as well start somewhere small or just working at a movie theater. Like a movie theater is great too, because the stress is you got to keep the place open, but you can take a lot of chances. And if you're a place that has 7 screens and some of them are small, then you can take real risks and you can kind of learn how those risks do. Now we can do that in a normal year because we'll show 120 features. So we can show stuff like Pedro Costa, which gets a release in America, but that's not, you know, it's not playing at a mall and it's not going to play in every city, but we feel like we should support that. We can show some real abstract stuff. We put it in a smaller one of our screens. We write about it in a certain way and we can take that chance. So, you know, it's good to start somewhere small. And then a lot of people work at multiple fests. So you also get to meet people that way. Because I've done literally, even after I worked at Sundance, for a while, we didn't work year round. So I would work at very small festivals. And we had this festival in Las Vegas, the Cine Vegas Festival in the summer. And it was great, but it was still relatively small. Our budget was not very big. We showed maybe 50 movies over 10 days because we couldn't show anything that started before 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So we kind of had to like keep it for Vegas. But by working at both of these places, I also learned a lot because I could take different types of risks. You know, you can get away with some stuff in Vegas that you couldn't even do at Sundance. And then of course, some high art wouldn't play well in Vegas. So yeah, that's what I would say. And then, you know, and practice on showing films you're not crazy about, but they play well and there's an audience. So you have to serve that audience. It is a job as well as, you know, a fun thing to do.
Definitely, isn't it? It's about, because it's that exactly that about kind of figuring out your audience and what that actually feels like to put something out. And I think we have here in the UK as well, like so many really brilliant like DIY like programming collectives and stuff like that. And so that's always like, just like try and show stuff in your community, like find your local community cinema, volunteer there. Not going to make any money yet, but it's a really good way of just like starting out and figuring out those kind of really early on lessons and skills that you're going to need as you move forward. Yeah,
it's a great way to put it. Yeah, because if you're just trying to compete with Hollywood and the goal is to make money, like you're going to lose this game. Like you can't just, and who cares? Everybody's already doing that. Like you just have to set yourself up. You can't expect a certain type of big audience for a certain type of niche film, but that's fine. Just give yourself realistic expectations.
Definitely. And also, right, if you make a terrible decision on something you're programming, I'd definitely rather show that to 30 people first than 300. Just start with some small audiences, test it out.
Yeah, you never know.
Cool. What have we got here? So this is going back to the kind of selection process. So out of that potential 500 that you're kind of shortlisting from, how many would have been shown at other festivals? Is it better to start and work through the festival circuit with Sundance towards the end, or go straight to Sundance for a premiere, especially in the international category? Also, from that 500, how many would be international versus US domestic?
I mean, out of that 500, I bet it'd be more like, you know, we would lean more international in that group because just the obvious stuff, like it's very difficult to get any money in America. We have some grants, not a lot. And usually they go towards features. So the quality of an international short, it's just, you get more professional actors. It kind of gets down to just that. And, you know, that's not a slam on America. It's just like, if you can get your shit together to like have a really professional actor and you have some money, you're probably going to make a feature, not a short. So it'll be more like, you know, it will lean towards international stuff, but we do want to do 50-50 because we're an American festival. So we'll try to do at least 50% US. And that's not hard to do. It just means it's just a different ratio to talk about. I think those 500 probably play most, they get out there. It's not like we're so smart, you know, that we found the only 500. I would guess, you know, like knowing the premiere policy, I think Cannes and Berlin are worth trying. And they both need a premiere. As far as I know Cannes does. I'm pretty sure Berlin does for most of their sections. Maybe not every single. There's been a few shorts that played us first and Berlin second, but then that was the very first two festivals. But I would pay attention to what Berlin and Cannes. If you can start at Berlin and Cannes, then you just go from there and then play anywhere you can after that. I'm sure England, it's probably competitive, like for festivals. Some of them have premieres policies, but you know, which doesn't mean just one is the one for you. There may be, I mean, London's got so many and they're different. Plus, if you made a genre film, then there's Fantastic Fest, there's Sitka's, there's Fantasia Montreal, there's so much stuff. Actually, what is in London? What is the big genre fest there? Is there one?
I think there's a kind of sci-fi London, but there's not kind of a big genre fest in the same way that like Fantastic Fest is. Like Fright Fest, yeah, that's true. Yeah, Fright Fest. But yeah, no, I think that's really good advice. And it's you know, it's thinking about where you're submitting and where your film is going to fit and all that kind of thing as well. Mm-hmm. But I think the premiere policy is definitely something that lots of festivals are less likely to kind of be enforcing these days.
For sure. I mean, I've shown stuff that was paid for by YouTube, and then we played it. Like, we hadn't seen it. We don't care. And people think that we show it first anyway. Like, we could be number 100 in your fest schedule, and people are like, oh, premiered at Sundance. Like, yeah, it doesn't matter. Features, you have to play this press and industry bullshit, and that's why it matters. Shorts, it shouldn't matter. I do think Cannes and Berlin do such good things for you that you should try to play there. You know, be realistic about what they play too. It's not a lot. And it's not cheap, but if you want to try that first, and then what would just be the best for you? Obviously, if you're a doc, you have a whole different path than a fiction and a genre.
Exactly. So there's another one here about kind of submission process. So do you watch films at other festivals and think we should have put this in the festival, even if they might not have submitted to Sundance? Do you see things that you're like, no, why did they not come to us?
Why didn't they? Wait, let me look at this one. Let me reread it. What name was it?
Simeon Costello.
Let's see. Costello, hold on. Okay, yeah. I might add another festival and see. We should put this in the festival. You say not submitted. Yeah, but again, it's often what I was saying. It's more experimental. It's more the filmmaker thinks we don't show that type of film, or it's so strange. Like, you know, I mean, it's just they think that we only show Hollywood stuff. And this happens more with international stuff. Like, they just want to show celebrities because that's the only thing they saw coming out because it's the only thing that got a release. Where it's like, that's the kind of stuff. So I went to Locarno. I was on the shorts jury last year in Locarno. And I mean, I saw so much good stuff. And there's definitely one Swiss film we happened to play. I think there was two that I saw that we played. Whether or not they would have submitted, I don't know. I think they might not have. But it's rare. It's more like we will see stuff that played Cannes. We'll see the student films at Cannes. Stuff played Berlin, we actually double up on. Stuff that plays London, we play for sure.
Cool. So we've got one here. There's an industry myth that due to the amount of submissions, 13.5K last year, that after a period of time, Sundance doesn't have the resources to keep reviewing, and unless you submit in the first month, you have no chance of acceptance. What would you say to kill that myth forever?
Why would I do that? Why would I do that? A lot of the myths happen because somebody made a short, we don't show it, they can't believe we didn't show it. Oh, okay, what'd I do? I submitted late. Oh, I'm not from America. Oh, I don't have a celebrity in it. You know, I totally get how you might come to that reason, and your short might be great. It's more your short didn't, 9 times out of 10, your great short didn't get in because there's too many great shorts. And we show 70 out of the 500 we saw. No, I get paid to do this. It's ridiculous. If I stopped watching, I wouldn't have my job. I'd have to go find a job outside of movies. God, don't do that. Although Bright pays better. No, it's really because there's 7 to 10 of us. With the screeners, there's 10 of us. We take 6 months. We get paid to do it, and you paid. Like it's not just because I'm a filmmaker, but especially because I'm a filmmaker too. It's like I paid somebody. I hope they see it. You know, if I don't get a rejection letter, I'm always like, all right, well, hope they watched it. I have to assume they did. But we watch everything. Also because everybody's watching what we do. So we watch every one. There was one short that was number 2, and it got in. And then there was a short. This one's I'll just write it down because it's also good too. Fauve from Montreal. Okay. Their password was broken, and it just kept drifting, and he didn't write back to us. I don't know why. And then finally we were just like, because we also have like some interns that double check everything. Does every single thing have a rating? Did every single link work? Stuff like that. And we were just like, dude, it's October. We have to pick them in November. Like, you got to get this. They sent us their password. It was the very last thing we watched. It got into Sundance. It won a special jury award. And it got nominated for an Oscar. So it's like, you know, yeah, no, it's really, I can't speak for any other festival except the one I work at, but we get paid to do it, and we just take a long time to get it done. Exactly. And you couldn't let them go by. You'd be like, what if the best short I've ever seen is in that group of shorts I've not watched? Like, totally, yeah. You know, you don't want to miss out on showing something brilliant as well. Like, yeah, it would be the fun of it. Oh, it'd be so. Yeah, I can't. I'm trying to think. There's never really been a short that we rejected that we saw somewhere else. We're like, oh no, with shorts. It's more like we see a great short go on to a great life, and we didn't have room for it. And we're like, oh, thank God that a lot of people are seeing that short. We just couldn't fit it in. Also, no matter how unique you think your short is, there's 3 others. Yeah. And it's just, what? No, this is the only one where a woman has a rabbit birth, you know, like, no, you were one of 3 that year. It's kind of crazy, I know. So. With features, that's different. You see a feature rough cut, and you're like, I don't know where it's going to go. And then 6 months later, this amazing film plays another festival, or like, it came out good, but that 2.5-hour cut I saw, we didn't know if it was going to end up good. That happens a lot in features. Yeah, definitely. So another one here. So as well as being a filmmaker, I've also been a screener for some Oscar qualifying festivals, and we had to reject any short that had end credits longer than 90 seconds. Are end credits also a deciding factor to make the Sundance cut? Oh man, I wish I had that. That's such a great rule. 90 seconds, that's too long. I don't care who PA'd your short. You know, it's tough because you want to give respect to people who helped you so much on your short. You know, it's still short, and you don't want to kill the viewing experience. That's the thing. No, we don't have anything. Like, we've shown, there's a few. I'll tell you what definitely happened. We showed a short. I don't think I'm outing them. It's a UK short. It's a really good short called Saturday, and it's about the Liverpool soccer incident and the effects of that. And it's amazing short. And I'm pretty sure, I'm sorry if I'm remembering this wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was that they had about 2 minutes of credits. And, you know, that was a heavy film about a real situation. They had people they had to thank. I totally get it. Also, you know, you may have some legal need because of how you are funded in another country. You may need to actually have longer stuff. We understand that. Yeah. But they watched it with a crowd with their 2 minutes of credits, and they cut some of the credits. Or maybe they might have just sped it up a little bit more. I can't remember. Because you feel like every 2 minutes, you know. You really do. Yeah. But I think
Speed it
like
up.
you probably see more just like my wacky comedy I made with my friends. Like you don't need them in the credits. You know?
Oh, no, definitely not. Definitely not. And it is mad sometimes. I was watching something the other day actually that had like 4 minutes of credits. So like when the film finished, I was like, that wasn't 20 minutes. And I was like, oh, wait, there's like a quarter of this film is credits. Don't do that because that makes it like 5 minutes longer to screen.
Yeah, exactly. If somebody saw your film and you're like, I want to hire that editor, they'll pause it and figure out who the editor was. Don't worry. The real sin is you don't need credits at the start. You're not introducing an actor. That happens a lot. Just like, you're not introducing an actor. They're going to be with me for 10 minutes. I'm not like, and if they get in a feature, they're going to say introducing them, you know, based on a story by like, dude, just get me into this movie. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. And lots of logos, funding logos, like obviously sometimes there's, you know, you have to put them on, but
Yeah.
in shorts, ideally, just don't need it. It's fine.
Don't
We'll see at the end.
it.
Right, let's see what we've got. So how important is marketing? So press kit, trailers, etc. Does that impact chances of selection at all?
Not of selection for us because I know we are a regional festival that happens in Utah. I live in Los Angeles. This happens in Utah, but really we're a national festival. I just need to show the best shorts I can get. And I see so many that nothing you say is going to change our mind. But you should do this, first off, for practice, because you're going to continue to make shorts and you hopefully will make features if you want to, or TV, whatever. So it's good practice to try this. I would say it helps you more in the regional festivals. Like, hey, I made this film in London, but I'm actually from Wales. There may be a festival that makes sense for, or I'm from the city, there's a festival in that city, and I'm actually from there. Like, okay, they want to support somebody that's a local. That's the kind of stuff real bare bones stuff really helps. If it's a story, something you can add to the story that people know the background from, that after you watch it, that might help. I think that's when it's key for us. I think for the big fests, we just need to show the best stuff. We love to see a great poster, but that's not what got you into the festival.
It's nice to see for sure.
That could hurt you too. Like this poster's amazing. Film's not amazing.
Yeah, I feel that with like going back to font choices, when you start and it's got like a really good title and font, you're like, oh yeah, excited. And then when it's not as good, you're like, no, it started so strong.
Exactly.
So we've got a question here. Are there any particular topics that you're drawn to that you feel are lacking in current submissions that you want more of? Conversely, are there some areas, types of stories and topics that you're absolutely sick of seeing?
I mean, I don't need to see any more hitman or mobster things, It's kind of, unless you actually knew the hitman, then you should definitely tell that story. You should.
You were the hitman and now you're a filmmaker.
Man, there's some, that would be something different. But for there's that kind of like, whatever's the most popular film at the moment, like you don't need to make a short version of it. You're trying to get a job in Hollywood or London, making big movies. So you make something that looks like, the popular filmmaker of the moment. You just look like you're ripping them off, And then when it gets to something like Wes Anderson, like, I'm sorry, that might have been your style, but now it's his style. It's tough when it's so specific. You just can't. Fame crushes stuff like that. And you can be clever, you could do different things, but it's something to have. It's a discussion to have with yourself. I think, I just don't see enough personal stories. I always try to talk about, whatever's in your background, that should be, maybe it's not the first thing you do, but you should concentrate on what do you know inside and out, and it's from your life or a friend or a situation. It doesn't have to be dramatic. You look at Lynn Ramsey's shorts, they're incredible. And then Ratcatcher is incredible. And it's not like it's her life story, but she knows that world inside and out. It's so good. And, the camera work, the acting's good, but it's not about that. It's about the vibe and the kind of story she told. in all of those shorts. I think all 3 of them are on Criterion too, or well, I don't know if the Criterion's available there. It might be, yeah, it isn't. Yeah, go to FOP, please reopen FOP. But if you figure out that's what I want to see, is just like, what is the small story that takes place? And your small story may be bombastic, or it may be what happened at the bus stop one time. And that may be a comedy. It doesn't have to be super heavy, you know. I mean, Lynn's stuff is amazing, but like, you don't have to drown a kid. You can also it could be a comedy. And now if you really like that, there may also be a sci-fi story that you can do, but like, okay, now how are you going to do it with your means? And it may, like, you really want to do sci-fi? Well, I'd love to see something that's like, feels tiny and still sci-fi. What's Nacho's film? Time Crimes. Which is a feature, but just like, you know, if you look at it, like, I don't know how much he spent on it. And he's a crazy dude too. But like, he probably didn't spend that much on it, but the world's so specific. It's so good. And it deals with time travel so hard, but everything he does, like, oh, that makes sense. And, you know, he really knew how to tell that story. He acts in it, and it works out. And he knew how to get it. But so what's going to come? Why make this difficult? Like, what is the easiest thing you can do? And we can feel that. And I'd love to see more of that, instead of like, oh, I really like Christopher Nolan's films, so I'm going to make a shitty version of that.
Yeah. No, it's interesting, isn't it? But yeah, what have we got here? So this one's asking, is it okay to submit an unfinished short for an early deadline and then update the film freeway Vimeo version before the final deadline?
Yep, it is. That's an easy one. Yep.
Simple. Yeah, great. And what are your kind of thoughts on watching kind of unfinished work, or work that's not kind of graded yet, sound mixed yet, that kind of thing?
I mean, it sounds like we're harping on one thing, but it's real. Like, if your rough cut's 20 minutes and your finished film's going to be 12, you know, don't send it in yet. Yeah. If your rough cut's 14, it's going to be 12. That's okay. And the sound's not done. Okay, it's not really. We need to hear what's going on. If you're going to have music and it's going to change things, that's a decision you got to make. Maybe don't send it to us without the music. Temp tracks are tough. And like you were saying before, like, oh, they got Nino Rota's film music from 8.5. Like, all right, I'm just gonna do that. Don't do that. I think you want to kind of have a real strong sketch in terms of like runtime. We know color correction is going to get better. We know the sound of the dialogue is going to get better. That's okay. That won't affect it.
Yeah, totally. I like this question. So as a festival programmer, how proud do you feel when you are the one that discovers the film? Does it then feel like your baby too?
I feel like it's too, even though we're huge, and because we don't have a premiere policy, I don't think I'm the person who found it, unless it's something, you know, we do a lot of work to help support Native American filmmakers. And, you know, there's not funding for that. We have a small fund for Native shorts. And so that's when we feel like we've really done something. We found somebody who was making films, but hadn't broken out yet. It's a Native filmmaker. They don't live in New York or LA, and they're doing really interesting work. And we gave them a little money. We gave them some advisors to speak with. That's when we feel like, okay, we really helped this person. They were going to get there anyway, but there's a lot of obstacles, more than if you live in New York and you have a friend who's a really good actor. That's different. That's just it's not a gimme, but it's something else. Otherwise, I feel it's more like we have our favorites just in our own little group, but it's not about discovering it. Just like, this is going to play so good. You guys are jaded, you know, that sort of stuff. But I guarantee, and now everybody I met that I've gotten along with is going to think I'm talking about them. There's always one short, at least one short. I'm like, we're not going to show a short that I think shouldn't be in Sundance. It doesn't get that drastic. It's more just like, all right, I don't think it's that funny. And then that's the person I always hang out with the most and I get along with, and we have a great time. Now everybody I've hung out with at Sundance is just like, you didn't like my short.
Yeah.
Or it's more like sometimes there'll be a documentary that's so heavy and so dark, and then you meet them and they're like, "Hey dude, what's up?" You know, and they're like super funny people, like, "Oh, I guess you got it all out in your film." You're not like this brooding, you know. Anybody that's brooding filmmakers are boring. A couple, you know, if you're I don't know who does that well, that's famous. It's all nobody. It's all
No, it's just
Bergman,
like,
Ingmar Bergman. Like, yeah, he's kind of a dick. He's a good filmmaker.
yeah.
Like, oh, like, you know what? Get a job as a fry cook if your life's so tough making a movie. Like, what are you brooding for, man? You're making movies. Yeah. I guess that's what drives you to make a good film. I don't know.
I mean, sure, but you know, it'd be nice to be if you're fun to hang around with as well, and you don't take life too seriously.
Yeah, totally.
Let's see what have we got. Okay, so quite specific, but are there any examples of shorts working in documentary tradition, but more experimental, using real people as actors that you love?
Ah, man, I can think of features. That's like Close Up, Abbas Kiarostami's Close Up, which is the king of all that. We don't see that often. And again, like, yeah, I can think of features because if you're going to get it together enough to have that, you're probably going to make a feature. Especially if it's a doc, you can get away with it with a small amount of money and perhaps take a while to do it. Shorts, I can't, it's rare. We see amazing documentaries, but we don't see many recreations by the people who lived it. There's one, I'm going to get the title wrong, and it sounds like I'm making up the title, but it is, I think this is the closest to how the footage was. I know I'm getting this wrong. If you Google that in New York Times, because it's on the New York Times Op Docs, you'll find this short. There's an incredible short from Israel that a guy, I think this is close to how the footage was. Yeah, somebody let me know if I got that wrong. That's what the internet's for. His mom was dying of cancer. They were filming her all the time on mini DV. They film her last day. She passes away the next morning. The kid he's a kid when this happens, and he makes this film later in life about his own family. He wanted to watch her, and he backs up the film, the DV tape. He hits play, he sees her, and he gets scared, so he hits stop. The dad, not knowing that happened, grabs the camera, and he wants to film the house now that she's gone, not understanding he's recording over the footage of her last day as he does that. So this really happens. Later in life, the son makes a short about this, and he has to recreate that footage that was lost, and he does it with little things that were in the house. And I don't know how he did it because it's years later, and there's little things that represent the people, and then you see it in the real footage that's from a different day, or from the footage him filming the house. And it's sort of like marionette. I mean, that's not the right way to put it, but because it's not animated either, you know, it's incredible. It's really good.
That's super interesting.
That kind of experimental stuff, where it's more with form. I think this is the closest how the footage looked. Yeah, that sounds right. Good title.
It's such a good title. That is good.
I don't know what his font was. It's probably good too.
So we've got a simple one. Should young filmmakers apply to Sundance?
Yeah, why not?
Absolutely.
Yeah, why not? Yeah, we don't know your age, and we don't care. Or, you know, we showed, this is a famous story, but it kind of goes without saying, like, Jill Soloway had worked in TV, but had never made films. She kind of had gotten out of TV and didn't know what to do. She had $1,000. She made a short, and we showed it. I had no idea who she was, and she was 45 years old when she made that short. And that helped get her second career going. She made a feature after that, Afternoon Delight, and then she made Transparent, the TV show. So it's like, it's more like you're somebody that hasn't shown at festivals. Like, you should submit to festivals. Yeah, it doesn't matter what your background is. We obviously have had a lot of filmmakers that are interesting. They were journalists, and then they started making a film. So it's a career change, but they had never made a film before. Sometimes that happens. People not even in the media that come into it. I mean, it's usually somebody that's come from a different art form, but that's always great.
That's great. We've got another one here. And has watching thousands of short films helped you deliver leaner cuts of your own films? And I guess how has it impacted your filmmaking in general? It'd be interesting to know.
Oh man, it's the combo of like, I thought that'd be a good idea, but it's a bad idea that somebody else made, you know. I mean, it's different because I do docs, but like I'll like, you know, like anybody, you just write down ideas, just like maybe this will work out later. And then in equal amount of time, somebody else does it way better. You know, yeah, all right, well, I guess I won't make that documentary about water in California. I don't know, something, it's not that, but you know what I mean? I almost always, I will think about like, I get it. And this filmmaker keeps treating me like I don't understand what's going on. And so I think I've gotten better at like an audience, got to trust an audience. And it's really all about what you show. And this is for most films. There's going to be one or two films that need explanation, but for most films, like people pick it up in 30 seconds. If they're watching a short, they probably watch a lot of shorts. If you make a documentary and you need to get information out, that's very, very much like factual. That's different. But even then, like, if you have to tell me a ton of facts and text on screen, it's not a movie anymore. You know, It's an article. And if you read an article and you really want to make a film off of it, fiction or narrate or a documentary, like, are you going to have 2 hours of narration so people know what's up? You know, that kind of stuff. It's like, so I tried to think like, how can I tell the audience what's up and trust that they're going to get it? And that has always made, like, I made one film that was 57 minutes. I think I could probably cut 5 minutes off of that. The last thing something I did last year was 77 minutes. It's like, and there's so many other cool things I could have added to the story, you know, because it was about Western movies and how a lot of American macho bullshit's all a lie from movies. A lot of this stuff didn't happen and we buy into it. And it's far more interesting if you knew the real story. And there were so many more cool things I could put in there. It's just like, I mean, it's just too much. You got to keep it, you got to trust your audience.
Yeah, definitely. That's a really good thing to learn, isn't it? So I've got another one here. Do you think the trend is heading towards online premieres as opposed to physical screenings?
Yeah, I mean, not counting COVID, which is a mess.
Oh yeah, exactly.
If you heard, like, you know, even if you don't believe it's real, like, it's a mess and it's gonna mess up your life. Sorry, pal, and it's real. But if it's a normal year, I think that you've got two different types of films, and like, you can't compete with the most famous stuff, whether you're going into a movie theater or you're going online. You put it online doesn't mean anybody's gonna see it. It can be free, doesn't mean anyone's gonna see it. You can have very famous people in it, you know. We didn't get to that yet, but we can break that down easy. If you have a famous person in your film, I don't care, nobody cares. You know? If that's what you need to do to get your film finished, then okay, that makes sense. But for the most part, like, it's not gonna, I'm just sitting there like, oh wow, Joaquin Phoenix is in the short, you know. I am not picking on him. It's just the famous person that came to mind, you know. Like, we would show stuff with him in it. There was a good short with him last year that was really good. That's not why it didn't play, but it's just like, oh cool, hey, he's in this. Yeah. But with COVID, it really is tricky because it's still too much stuff online. You may put it online and no one will watch it. So I think things are leaning towards more online premieres for films that have a following.
Yeah.
This whole, you know, speaking of Christopher Nolan, this whole thing about when this film is going to come out, at least in America, right? It hasn't come out there yet.
No. It's same here. No one's got any idea.
Yeah. So the weird thing now is, if it comes out in Christmas, that actually is going to destroy that'll affect our festival. You know, that'll affect any festival that's in January, February, because that thing's going to be the only thing, and it's going to make money, and theaters got to make money. So if you're a tiny festival in other cities and you need a theater, they're making hand over fist with these films that got to come out at Christmas. It's going to be weird. But The release here is August 26th. Maybe.
I think it's been pushed back again. I think it keeps just getting like pushed back.
They finally stopped saying for America. I think they stopped. They're just like, we'll see you on a holiday.
Yeah, sometime it will come.
Yeah. Kelly Reichardt's film, First Cow, it was supposed to come out right when this all hit. And I hope everybody sees it. But it made sense for that, like, you got to get that out. Just got to get it out now. It's going to be too hard to find another release for it.
Yeah.
And it's a big art film, so it's still going to have they still need to find its crowd, and it might find it, hopefully. But that made sense. I don't know what's going to happen. I think next summer things will slowly start coming around. And at least in America, the movie theaters, in some states you can reopen, but if you can only have 20 people in, like, you can't even pay your staff to work. So.
Yeah, exactly. It's tough. It's difficult.
It is tough.
Cool. So I wanted to just go back to a question that I had. And I guess it was just obviously speaking to probably a predominantly UK filmmaker audience right now. Have you noticed anything particular or any trends from the shorts that come to you from like UK filmmakers specifically?
I thought I'd see more Brexit stuff, but thank you for not doing that. And maybe we saw some, but I thought it'd be a wave, and it was very proper. Didn't go off onto the hot topic. No, I think we see a lot of good stuff. I feel like a lot of people in London are finding rural areas to tell rural stories. That comes up a lot, but of course that's going to be interesting to us because we don't know the areas or the stories. So that may be more successful in other countries. The same way, like, you may see a film shot in the desert and go nuts. And we're like, yep.
Yeah, we're like, what is this? Deserts? What are they?
What are they? And I'm just like, that guy's got sheep. Oh, it's so great. Big fan of all the trip stuff, Yeah, I don't know. I think we still see a lot of different things coming. We're definitely not bored with the stuff we see. We see a lot of great animation, we'll see a lot of rural documentaries, but that's still all pretty successful. Yeah, and I don't know if that's because maybe I'm not seeing every single thing, but we see a lot. But we're not seeing too much stuff fall into cliches. It's more, again, it's kind of more like there's going to be coming of age films. So what happens in that story, those are going to be universal. There's going to be marriage and divorce stories, is that universal or is that specific to it? I think I think there's some folks that are still really influenced by Mike Leigh. And then that's interesting, but that's a level of acting that's pretty tough to do.
Yeah. Cool.
And so
lots of good stuff. Plenty here. UK filmmakers banging, aren't they? I would say that. Great. So I guess finally, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the selection of shorts that are playing Sundance London next weekend. You've picked like 3 of my favorite UK shorts from the last year or so. It's such a good program. I'd really recommend everyone to get a pass and check it out. But can you talk us through the selection a little and any that sort of stood out to you when you were programming the festival this year?
I just brought up the list so I wouldn't forget anything. We try to make a good 90-minute program that just kind of shows definitely a roller coaster ride. The way we do in January, we don't want to have one type of film. But yeah, that was just not hard to do. And we even on my list, I won't go through them, but there's like 10 more that we liked that we couldn't find space for under it. Devil's Harmony, like really funny acapella, gone right, maybe, but really slick, really fun, different. Like we haven't seen many acapella singing. That's another thing. Like it's hard to do something with singing and musicals, and that really pulled it off well. Slug Life is just this crazy. There's some great animation, and there has been for a long time. We've shown a lot of Julia Potts stuff. We've shown quite a few. It's never hard to find good animation coming out of UK. Oh, did you hear? We don't have to get off on. I just heard the Brothers Quay got rid of their place. They moved out of their place. It's like, such an end of an era. I know they're American, but they've been there working for a long time. But Slug Life is this thing, just like, who is this? Who made this? This is great and disturbing. Let's meet this person. Sophie's film's really good. Beyond the North Winds is really nice. That's kind of one of those regional documentaries we were talking about, but that's also like real hybrid.
Yeah.
Has like, I'm probably a sucker for anything that sounds like sound from a cassette tape. That's a style. Like, it can be overdone, but sometimes it's great. It's mysterious. And like hearing this voice from the past, she has some incredible camera work, and it's really, it's interesting because, I grew up, I was in high school in the 1980s. So atomic era stuff is still, I know I'm at the end of the Cold War, but it's still like, it's interesting to see how that atomic energy is still, such a huge factor in our world today. And the way she chose to tell that story is different, really interesting. White Girl is really good. And that's the kind of film that could be sort of schlocky and like horror that's funny, which would be fine too. Yeah. But every bit of that's kind of like, oh, you kind of almost wait for this to be like, oh, is it going to go a different way? Like, no, this seems real. The acting's good. The acting's not very movie kind of stuff. And you're not quite sure why things are happening the way they are, but just like really, really powerful, really strong film. No, I Don't Want to Dance. It's a 2-minute. It's not one of those films just like this played at a lot of these festivals. But that's the thing, 2 minutes. It's meant to be, it's a cautionary tale about dancing, but it's, meant to be funny, and it gets in and it gets out, and it's not the kind of film you'll forget. The animation's really good. It has a certain look. There's no dialogue in it. You are laughing. If you're in a crowd, a lot of people are. I love those crowds where somebody's laughing at one thing and somebody's laughing at somebody else. You can't fake that at home.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those films that's really quick and good. Pompeii's probably the first film I've seen. I shouldn't say that. One of very few films I've seen made on an iPhone, and it's supposed to be the video from an iPhone that works.
Yeah.
Style. That's one of those movies like you're talking about, somewhat secret world, the world of gay clubs, but then also how that breaks down into other sub-societies and how you're still getting kicked out and how you're still getting ostracized when you think it's going to be this type of community. And they have such great acting. And that's the thing, if you want to do an iPhone film, like that's the kind of thing, the story calls for it, the acting fits it. The way it's editing, there's a Q&A after our program. We have a Q&A with most of these filmmakers, and they talk a little bit why they decided that style and how they pulled it off. Super difficult to make that work. It really does. Really good. Junior bangers. Who doesn't want to watch 10-year-olds racing in a, it's not a demolition derby, but a smash 'em up car race. Like, the thing is great. Another regional documentary. And it's fun, but, has really good access to this world. It's not, our doc program, it's important to have, you can't just pummel people for 90 minutes. In a feature, you may have a certain tone. In a shorts, we don't just have to be like, this is important, and you're terrible for not helping this, subject out. You want to have like enlightening things, and you want to have fun stuff. And Junior Bangers is so much fun, but again, great filmmaking, great camera work, really well storytelling, and 13 minutes. Actually kind of surprised me it's 13. It feels much faster.
Yeah.
And then the last one, Stephen Irwin. I don't know how well everybody knows Stephen Irwin, but like, you need to watch everything this freak guy is making. Again, so much good animation coming out, and we do like animation that's just good and maybe traditional, but Stephen Irwin's just like, I'm not saying he needs help. Sophie too. Like, I'm not saying they should be committed, but it's like something is going on in their minds that is really interesting and beautiful. And that's one of those things like, oh, you always show a film by blah, 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 like Don Hertzfeldt, Stephen Irwin. It's like, yeah, these films are all good. And it's tricky. We have these conversations where like, to be a filmmaker, there's somebody like John Borman, all those films are different. And Excalibur is not Deliverance. I guess there's a lot of overlap, but you know what I'm saying. There's they're relatively different stories, different worlds, period pieces, different things. Something's funny. To be a filmmaker, and if you have something you like and you want to keep doing it over and over again, then you should do that. If that's what comes easy and that's what and you feel comfortable doing, and you can be, the end is accessible. I know I can make this and I can make it again and again, and you change something, you should do that. Don't worry too much about getting caught in something. We have these discussions where like, are they doing the exact same thing they've done before? And once in a while that happens. That's kind of more dramas though, and there's not a lot of style. Like, oh, it's another family drama. They've done that a lot. Maybe we'll show it a few times, but we're not gonna show it a bunch. With animation or something that's a style, you're like, yeah, that's the style, and that's the way these, especially in animation, that's the way you do it. But Wood Child, my bar is even higher. Like, is this gonna be as good as Moxie and Obvious Child? Like, no way. And then by the end, like, oh shit, that film's really good.
Yeah.
Again, 9 minutes. It's only 9 minutes.
There you go.
Have you seen that one yet?
10. I have. That's like the one I haven't seen on the list yet. So I'm really excited to watch it. And you've just given it such a like great setup as well.
Yeah. Oh, it'll live up. I mean, I guess if you don't like animation, don't watch it.
Oh no, I do. I love and Slug Life is one of my favorites. It's just batshit crazy, and Sophie's amazing.
So good. And it's still like, but you still feel like you're like, oh, there's something. It's not a bunch of stuff thrown up against the wall either.
Oh no. It's got that intention, and it like knows what it's doing. It's just mad. I love it.
Yeah. So if you look at our program,
well, thank you for that. That was like,
yeah, thanks for even talking about the shorts.
Always here to talk about shorts. Try shut me up, basically. I love shorts. But yeah, no, it was really great to chat, and thanks for kind of talking through the program. I hope everyone's going to really make the most of it this weekend. I think Jess has put a little code in the chat box, so get yourself a discount, cheaper pass, do it. There's so much on offer. I mean, honestly, the £15 is worth it for the shorts alone, like, in my opinion.
And I forget the other two are doing. Boy State is pretty incredible. It's pretty great.
It looks really
documentary.
Cool.
Yeah.
But yeah,
awesome.
Brilliant.
Yeah, thanks for doing this. It's always great to, I mean, again, I'm not saying it just because I'm doing this. It's like, the stuff we see coming out of Montreal and Poland and London is some of the most exciting stuff now. Sorry, Paris. Paris is really good too. But it's like, but we expect that out of France, and London, I get it. There's a lot of people there. That doesn't mean the film scene is going to be cool, but going there and seeing the excitement, seeing the kind of stuff that's showing and the kind of stuff we see every year, it's like, it's got England's got a pretty good thing going now. It's impressive.
Definitely. Brilliant. Great thing to end on. Thanks so much, Mike. It's been really good to chat.
Yeah, great to talk to you. Thanks so much.
All right then. Bye, everyone. Speak to you soon.